For 12 years, Heath Ledger defied Hollywood's expectations, refusing to be boxed in by heartthrob roles, chasing complexity over comfort, and reinventing himself with every performance. But on January 22, 2008, the world stopped. The actor who transformed himself for every role was found dead alone in his New York apartment. Was this the tragic result of an exhausted artist struggling with addiction, a deliberate act of suicide, or the consequence of a system that pushed him further than anyone realized? Heath Ledger was one of the most magnetic actors of his generation.
So Heath Ledger really starts becoming a household name with the movie 10 Things I Hate About You with Julia Stiles. And he has this kind of surfer, skater, bad boy image. He's long hair, he's really cute. He's kind of the boy you don't want to bring home in that movie. And that is where he starts coming into Hollywood and getting noticed.
After his breakout role, he was quickly labeled a young hunk, an image he disliked and felt boxed him in. From the start, he pushed hard to shake that early typecasting, determined to prove he was far more than a teenage heartthrob.
You know, I don't like to do anything for money, you know, I just don't. It bores me. I'm just hopeless like that. If I probably didn't do this, I probably wouldn't do anything. You know, I'm like that. I've never been able to work or be worked. I just have to be having fun. I have to find fun in it, and I do in this. I love it, and I have a huge fascination for the industry.
As his fame rose, Ledger pushed into more serious work: Monsters Ball, Lords of Dogtown, and Brokeback Mountain, a performance defined by restraint, vulnerability, and astonishing emotional depth.
So for him to go from being that kind of hunky surfer teen icon to taking on this very serious, edgy role is a massive deal, and to make it so believable and so heartbreaking is very, very powerful.
He wasn't just becoming a star, he was becoming an artist. Away from the camera, Ledger's life was gentler, a devoted father and a curious collaborator. Those who knew him speak of his work ethic, his dry humor, and his insistence in authenticity in everything he touched.
I feel that he was such an extraordinary human being and so generous with himself and so talented. All of those qualities were just reflected in how he acted, and that's perhaps why there's this huge fascination with him. You know, he really, really gave himself to life and to the parts he played.
At the beginning of 2008, he was working intensely filming The Dark Knight and the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus back-to-back, a period many saw as the pinnacle of his career. But the attention that came with success often collided with his desire for privacy, and the pressure to deliver, to transform, to surpass himself never fully eased.
The paparazzi kind of gives you a hard time?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, look, they're bored.
You throw stuff at them, is that true?
Yeah.
I think people are behind you on that. I don't think anyone's complaining, but what do you throw?
I've thrown an egg.
You've thrown an egg?
Yeah, not at them, just kind of next to them so it splatters up against them.
Those close to him began to wonder, was the intensity that fueled his brilliance also taking a toll he couldn't outrun? January 20th, 2008. Heath Ledger, a regular at the Beatrice Inn in New York, is spotted at the VIP bar, frequented only by the city's elite. Sources say he would often arrive at the lounge around 3:30 a.m. and stay until sunrise. That night, witnesses say he kept to himself at the bar, drinking quietly and seemingly careful to avoid drawing the attention of the media. The following day, Heath called his sister. She later stated that their conversation felt completely normal, full of laughter and ease, with nothing to hint at the tragedy that was about to unfold. July 22nd, early afternoon. His housekeeper arrives at his Soho apartment. The loft is quiet, the bedroom door closed. After knocking on his bedroom door a few times with no answer, she enters the room and finds him lying in bed, motionless. Shortly after, she calls 911. Emergency responders arrive and attempt to revive Ledger. Despite their efforts, Heath Ledger is pronounced dead at 3:36 p.m.
Good evening and welcome to 7 News, and we start with the shock death of Perth actor Heath Ledger, a death that has stunned millions around the world and rocked the movie industry.
His naked body was found this morning in his New York apartment with tablets beside his bed. Here in Perth, his distraught family have described Ledger's death as a tragic accident. He was 28.
From this timeline, two questions loomed. What had led to Ledger's sudden collapse? And had anyone seen the warning signs?
A housekeeper had earlier heard him snoring. When a masseuse arrived at 3 in the afternoon, they knocked on his bedroom door and got no reply.
Was his exhaustion on set and late nights out a simple strain of celebrity life or an early signal of something more
There were
serious?
prescription medications taken from the apartment. They included sleeping pills. They were not scattered about the apartment.
When the news broke, speculation erupted. Media outlets churned with theories that the role of the Joker had consumed him, that method acting had gone too far.
He recently disclosed that, during preparation for the role, he was getting barely 2 hours of sleep each night.
Tabloids seized on every detail of his private life. Rumors about depression following his breakup, struggles with sleep, and that prescription medications or an accidental overdose were to blame.
New York police say they are looking at the possibility of an overdose in connection with Heath Ledger's death. There were pills apparently strewn about the body, and there were 2 bottles, one for prescription drugs, one for non-prescription drugs.
Some claimed he had been unstable. Others painted him as driven, dedicated, and misunderstood.
We would like to thank our friends and everyone around the world for their well wishes and kind thoughts at this time. Heath has touched so many people on so many different levels during his short life, but few had the pleasure of truly knowing him. He was a down-to-earth, kind-hearted, life-loving, unselfish individual who was extremely inspirational to many.
Before toxicology results, headlines already painted him as a troubled genius. Could his death have been prevented? Or was he a casualty of a system that pushes artists too far?
The medical examiner will conduct an autopsy here in New York tomorrow to determine how Heath Ledger died. For now, fans and colleagues are remembering him as an outstanding actor who simply died too young, Susanna.
Within hours, the investigation began. Police sealed the apartment. The scene offered no signs of struggle or foul play, nothing to suggest anyone else had been involved. Neighbors and building staff reported no unusual sounds or visitors, leading investigators to wonder, if no one else was involved, what could have caused Ledger's sudden death? The subsequent autopsy and toxicology reports provided some answers. They revealed a mix of prescription medications in his system. Many were consistent with legitimate medical needs: treatment for a recent chest infection, severe insomnia, and the fatigue that had been building from filming back to back.
Sleep is essential for the regeneration of our immune system. It's essential for our psychological well-being. It's essential for our emotional and spiritual well-being. You cannot live well if you do not sleep. And if, like Heath Ledger, you suffer or for a prolonged period of insomnia, your mental health will inevitably and inexorably decline.
People who have difficulty in sleeping, have insomnia, often believe that just simply by taking tablets, that insomnia will be sorted out, they'll be able to sleep. And in the short term, sleeping tablets may assist with insomnia, but generally, it's not possible to cure insomnia in the longer term simply by the administration of drugs.
The medications had been prescribed by different doctors, raising questions about whether he had been engaging in doctor shopping. Doctor shopping is the practice of obtaining prescriptions from multiple physicians, typically without full disclosure, and is sometimes associated with medication dependency.
I think that people may believe that prescription drugs rather than illicit drugs are healthier. The fact that prescription drugs are in effect legal may make people feel more comfortable in taking them, and particularly if a medical professional has initially prescribed them.
Among the substances, one stood out: oxycodone, a powerful opioid typically reserved for chronic or cancer-related pain and capable of producing euphoria. Its presence prompted further questions. Where had it come from, and had Ledger developed a reliance on it?
I think if people are dependent on drugs and they happen to be prescription drugs, then they may have two sources of obtaining them, either from a medical professional or illicitly. In the case of somebody who is dependent on drugs or addicted to drugs, it will depend on the nature of their addiction, but if they can get hold of drugs, they will do by whatever means. And I think that sadly in Heath Ledger's case, he'd gone into a phase of really just consuming whatever drugs he could get access to.
The investigation provided answers, but it also deepened the mystery. How had a man so careful, so meticulous about his work and health, come to this tragic end? In the months before his death, Ledger faced mounting personal pressures. He and Michelle Williams had recently ended their relationship, a partnership that had begun on the set of Brokeback Mountain and quickly became central to both their lives.
Do things get any better than this?
We ask ourselves that each day.
Yeah, actually, we talk about that a lot.
Yeah.
We hope that they do.
They do. Every day it does.
They shared a daughter, Matilda, whom Ledger adored. But during this period, Matilda was in Norway with their mother filming, and the distance weighed heavily on him. He struggled with being far from her, missing the daily moments that grounded him.
I feel good about dying now because I feel like I'm alive in her, you know, but at the same hand, you don't want to die because you want to be around for the rest of her life.
Allegedly, his split with Michelle was influenced in part by Ledger's growing reliance on prescription medications, a strain that only deepened as a viral video of him at a Hollywood party made its way to the media.
Shit. Why?
In the video, an unidentified man appears to snort cocaine from a table in front of Heath. The constant glare of fame pressed on him more intensely than ever. Paparazzi followed him relentlessly, capturing every moment of his life. Ledger had spoken openly in interviews about his discomfort with this fixation, describing how invasive it felt and how exhausting it was to live under constant surveillance. It left many wondering, was the pressure of fame beginning to take a toll on him?
And I locked myself away for 6 weeks in a room, and I kind of came up with this creep. And you know, but you know, he's not just going to be scary. I mean, there are a few surprises. I think, you know, it was the most fun I've had with a character, hands down. It was just it was purely a character choice. I can honestly say that. But I really couldn't turn it down. It was creatively, it was just it was too good to be true.
When investigators searched Heath Ledger's apartment, they found his now famous Joker notebook. Pages filled with research, sketches, and unsettling fragments of the character's psychology. It offered a glimpse into just how deeply he had immersed himself in the role. People started to wonder, had playing the Joker affected him more than anyone realized?
He literally kept a journal where he wrote down the different emotions and thoughts and feelings that each of these characters he played had to have. And that caused him to have a lot of insomnia, depression, anxiety. He was very much the textbook troubled actor, troubled persona, and he poured a lot of that into his work.
I understand that Heath Ledger was a method actor, and what that means is he lived his character on a day-to-day basis. He didn't just come in, act, and forget about it. He carried the character into his personal life, and that's quite an interesting psychological phenomenon, really, because if you are truly a method actor, you become the person you perform. And by becoming, it's not a physical becoming, although it can be. It can involve gestures, it can involve movement, but it also is a psychological, emotional, and a spiritual becoming. And that creates quite a complex psychological landscape. And if that's what Heath Ledger was doing, it would have to have at least complicated his circumstances.
Layer onto that the exhaustion of back-to-back filming, ongoing personal stress, and lingering illness, and a pattern emerges. A perfect storm of mental and physical strain. All of it raised difficult questions, questions about intent, about what was really happening beneath the surface. Was this the tragic result of suicide, or something far more complicated? As the media frenzy reached its peak, official answers finally began to take shape. The medical examiner's findings were definitive. Heath Ledger had died from an accidental overdose.
Prescription drugs are so easy to get a hold of and so easy to overdose on. You are taking different things that are meant not to go together, that are not meant to go together in specific quantities, and your body gets addicted to them and used to them, so you're not getting the same effects you may have had when you first started on the drugs. So to get the same benefits, you are probably self-medicating to some extent, and there's a good possibility that's what Ledger was doing.
The toxicology report identified a fatal combination of prescription medications in his system. Most critically, oxycodone and hydrocodone, opioids that, when mixed with sedatives and anxiety medications, can slow breathing to the point of stopping entirely.
It's interesting to note that certainly the oxycodone and the hydrocodone are very available, have been very available for 20 years or so in the States and before that. And it's believed that in the last 2 decades or so, there have been at least 500,000 opioid overdose deaths.
If you're a celebrity like Heath Ledger, you both have great advantages and disadvantages in that. You have advantages in the sense you're going to have people who spend a lot more time with you to understand what your specific circumstances are and how these drugs might impact on your life. But you have a great disadvantage in the sense that people have a greater investment really in doing what you want because you are powerful, because you're rich, because you're famous, because you're in the public eye. So it's a very delicate balancing act, but one thing we need to accept is prescription drugs are not benign. They're not harmless. They can and do kill people, and they need careful monitoring.
Doctors and investigators concurred. There were no signs of intent, nothing to indicate suicide. Heath's death was a tragic accident.
Heath Ledger, as the Joker in The Dark Knight, kept us all on edge, anxious to see what act of appalling mischief he might commit next. With this bravura performance, as well as with a wide range of other roles to which he put his unique signature, Heath Ledger has left us an original and enduring legacy.
On February 22nd, Heath Ledger was posthumously awarded the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. His Joker performance reshaped modern cinema and cemented his place among the greats.
The first thing I said was, what's it about? He said, the Joker. I went, oh, blimey, Jack Nicholson's fantastic, extraordinary. How are you going to top that? And I said, have you cast the Joker? He said, yes. I said, who is it? He said, Heath Ledger. And I immediately said, that's fine. I think he can do something with this, you know? And he did. He sure as hell did.
His death was felt around the world. Tributes poured in from fans and fellow artists alike. each acknowledging the profound impact of his work and legacy.
This award tonight would have humbly validated Heath's quiet determination to be truly accepted by you all here, his peers, within an industry he so loved.
His passing also sparked important conversations about mental health and drug addiction within the industry and the relentless pressures faced by those in the spotlight. Heath Ledger remains one of the most talented actors of his generation. Yet behind the intensity of his performances was a person navigating immense pressures. His passing highlighted the hidden costs of fame and the delicate humanity behind his talent. A reminder that even those who seem unstoppable can face deep personal struggles.